This episode is sponsored by Seva Tea, handcrafted for the conscious soul. Deeply rooted in the ancient wisdom of Ayurveda, each sip, Seva Tea invites you on a sacred journey of self-care, elevating your soul through a mindful practice. Seva Tea is available at Seva Tea Lounge, located inside Kavala Wellness in Long Beach, California, and on Etsy. Learn more on Instagram at Seva Tea Lounge. Welcome to Healing Highs with Lara, where we talk about the highlights and serendipitous moments of our healing journey. I'm Lara. Thank you for being here. Today, I'm sharing a story from maybe 8 years ago at a time where I was under a lot of emotional stress. But I try really hard to have a positive outlook, always looking for the light in situations, always finding ways to be grateful and have a practice of gratitude. And even with that, what's funny is one time I had a doctor years ago test my hormones, and they remarked that I had so much serotonin that it was some of the highest amounts of the happy hormones that they'd never seen, which was so cool to hear and very validating. But at this time, 8 years ago, because I was under such a heavy amount of emotional stress, I was doing everything in my power to just stay present and be processing my emotions. I was riding my bike every day outside to yoga on the bluffs overlooking the ocean, going out with my friends. I was singing and playing music multiple times a week. I was traveling, meditating every day, journaling, having that gratitude practice. The list goes on. And I really planned my obligations and responsibilities around these things, because when I was doing them, I was so happy. I felt so good. And I could tell that when I was moving through the stressful times, that those things were really supporting me and helping me to not be pulled off of my center. And I was able to navigate those things from a place that I felt really good about. So I made sure that I was always doing those things to support myself, to keep myself grounded, connected. And I really knew that they were saving me from being depressed at that time. So at the same time, I had been sitting in ayahuasca ceremonies for about 2 years, and I was about to attend a couple nights of ceremonies. And a lot of times before a plant medicine ceremony, in my experience and from others' experiences that we've shared, that this happens, is you have this period of time where once you say, yes, I'm going to that ceremony, the spirit of the plant that you're going to sit with starts to connect with you and communicate with you. And it can bring up a lot of things that you are going to face in that ceremony and hopefully transmute and heal. So the spirit of the plant was really connecting with me during that time. And I was having really lovely moments as well, which is the story I want to share with you today. So it was about 2 days before we were going to the ceremonies, and I had this vivid dream where a hummingbird pierced my cheek with its beak and a drop of blood came out. And I knew that this was about whatever was going to come up in the ceremony, because in general, hummingbirds are a very strong spiritual animal, but especially for ayahuasca, a lot of the songs that are used in ceremony mention hummingbirds in those ceremonies. So 2 days later, I go to these ceremonies, and the ceremony has begun, and it's only maybe half hour into the ceremony, and the facilitator starts to sing a song that I'm familiar with. And in this certain song, they'll repeat a line and then say an animal's name. And they're kind of invoking the energies of these animals. And they're going from kind of walking around the circle of people as they're singing it. So they'll just slowly walk from person to person. So they would go through a line and then say the name of an animal. And at this time, I remember this facilitator would say like 4 or 5 animals. It would be like an anaconda, jaguar, eagle, condor, and hummingbird. Now, when I've heard that song, they'll say like 10 or 12 animals, like whale and all kinds of things, which is really cool. So the facilitator is walking around and they're playing a rattle and singing this song and saying the different animals, going from person to person. And I realize after they've kind of passed like 30 people and they're about 4 or 5 people from me, that they've said all the animals, repeatedly as they would, but they haven't said hummingbird. And so then I knew, okay, it became like a little bit suspenseful for me. Am I going to be right? Is it going to be for me that he will say hummingbird? And how interesting is that for the dream that I had, and that he hasn't said it at all, which in other ceremonies, they would have said it repeatedly. And so right as the facilitator comes in front of me, it's like the rattle became a magnet and it just pulled towards me. And I had a mat, so I was sitting further back on my mat, and the way they kind of had to reach, it literally felt like it was just getting pulled towards me. And as they were playing the rattle and their arm came closer to me, when you have 2 words kind of coming out of your mouth at the same time, but you don't mean to say one of them, so you kind of force out the one you mean to say. That's what it sounded like to me. It sounded like he wanted to say a different animal, and the word hummingbird came out like forced out of him, like hummingbird. And I just, sat there like, oh my gosh, okay. And I just was, in reverence and smiling to myself, because I thought this was so validating and so powerful for me. And I was just amazed. And I had my sister on one side and my boyfriend at the time on the other. And when they knew about the dream, so when he said that and the way that he said it, they both just looked at me. And again, I just sat there smiling because I just felt so content, so held by the container, the space that we were in, and the plant and the spirit of the plant. And then I was very excited for what was to come in the ceremony. And the next day, I went up to the facilitator to tell them about my dream. And before I even made the connection for them, they recalled the night before and said, when they came to me, it felt compulsory to say hummingbird toward me. So yeah, the whole thing, again, it just felt very validating for me. And when that happens, I will always ask myself, okay, why is this happening? What's going on? And obviously I'm going through this healing weekend in those ceremonies. But more importantly, how am I going to take that then, this message, into my life? So for me, okay, hummingbird, what does that mean? Why did that come up? And if you look up hummingbird, there are a lot of different meanings, right? I'm just going to talk about 2 or 3 that resonate for me. When I asked my facilitator during those ceremonies, what do hummingbirds mean to them in a ceremonial context, they said the main reason that they invoke hummingbirds during the ceremony is because they are considered in many South American tribes and the Santo Daime to be the saints of the forest. And I love that. To me, if I think of a saint, it's like a heavenly protector, someone who is living their life in a way that I would be inspired by. So I kind of would hold that energy to think, how can I apply this into my life? And then a way that I look at hummingbirds, and at the time was a very strong way for me, is that they also represent enjoying the sweetness of life, the nectar of life, living life to the fullest. I feel like that's what saints would do as well. They are living their life to the fullest, being an inspiration for others, offering protection and healing and a way of walking their path. And then the last way is hummingbirds can represent that you're going through challenging times and those times are coming to an end and the healing is about to begin, which was absolutely true for me because I had this dream 2 days before the ceremony and had this, days of healing, and then was integrating that healing into my life after that. So I love all of the different ways that we can look at the spiritual messages and what resonates for us. But for me, then the next step is, how can I integrate that and these messages into my life? And so at the time, I did some of these things or versions of them, and I thought I'd share this list with you because maybe these things will help you also enjoy the sweetness of life and living life to the fullest. I want to give you some very functional ways, but also take you through some bigger ways. And I'd love to right now just take you through a meditation to help you lean into and expand this frequency even more. So if you want to join me for this very brief meditation, go ahead and close your eyes and just take a deep breath in and exhale. I want you to imagine a very Alice in Wonderland like you are sitting on a petal of a giant, gorgeous flower. Really observe this flower. The color, the shape of the petals, the scent. Is it a warm day where the sun is out? Or is it cold and breezy? This flower has a nectar in the center that is full of joy and happiness, sweetness. This is your flower, your limitless nectar of joy. However you like to visualize the joy and happiness from this flower, just watch it wash over you. And take a moment just to observe what this feels like. Start to inhale and exhale joy, happiness, sweetness. And go ahead and blink your eyes open. Thank you for doing that with me. So here are some everyday ways, 2 deeper ways to create more sweetness in your life, live your life to the fullest. Very everyday ways that are accessible to most of us is you could take a warm bath and really indulge in it. You could light candles, music on, have aromatherapy, and really just have that time where it's like a sanctuary to yourself. You could also go get ice cream or dessert with a friend or a family member. You could snuggle with someone, hug someone. You could build a self-care routine. So start with 1 or 2 things. I like to start with one or two things, because if we have this list or this like, I'm going to do all these things, we can tend to overwhelm ourselves and then not really carry it out. So I like to just pick one or two things I'm going to implement so that it will stay with me over the long term. You could take your dog for a walk and stay off your phone. Really listen to the sounds around you, being present with your dog, watching them have a great time. You could take a yoga class or read your favorite book. So then some more deeper ways that really could be very beneficial for helping you enjoy the sweetness of life and living life to the fullest could be to look at healing your self-worth, your ability to know and communicate your boundaries. That could take some time. That could take, funds, or you could do it through like journaling, but it would be a commitment so that you're really diving deep into those things. You could do some healing like Reiki or somatic healing, theta healing. You could embark on adventures, the classic adventures of like traveling, whitewater rafting, to just the adventure of starting something new or that you've always wanted to do, like painting or taking a dance class, starting a new project. And then there's something in the middle of those things that I feel like is very accessible, but could pose some challenges. And for some you may need to look at things that possibly need to be unlearned or healed to help you do it. And what it is I'll make a decision for like 1 day, 3 days, that anything that comes up, any opportunity, anything anyone wants to offer to me, that I say yes. So it's like, I'm going to say yes to everything for the next day or 3 days. Obviously within reason and safety, of course, but I love doing this because it helps shift us out of needing a reason to do something. We go into a place of receiving. We are surrendering to these magical opportunities, and really flowing with this. And every time I've done that, so many things have opened up because I'm saying yes. And the energy then is the universe like, oh, she's open, she's accepting things, and so much more flows in. So, that's a range of things that are things that I do or have done, versions of it, to really help myself to live life to the fullest, where it can be big ways to very small ways. And I think all of those are very important. With that, we've come to the end of today's adventure. I hope that you found this helpful. We always end on asking the void a question. So, void, what is your favorite color?
Green.
Perfect. That's my favorite color too. All right. So thank you, healer, for joining me. I wish you joy and serendipity on your healing journey, and I hope our paths cross again.